Well, welcome to Faithful Politics. This is the ever faithful, old faithful. I am getting gray these days.
You are.
Look at this,
Yeah.
Will.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah,
It's
I
really
think
bad.
I could probably edit that out in the post production. Just maybe add a couple more either gray or dark, or I can make it pretty.
We're gonna do. I was gonna do just for men gel, but I haven't done it yet.
Oh,
I don't know why.
is
And
it
I need some of that stuff that helps with balding.
the Rogaine?
Rogaine, rosacea. Is that a real thing?
I know Rogaine's a real thing. Like
I know Rogaine. Yeah.
yeah,
Does it actually work?
I don't know. I mean, I've considered doing it because, I mean, mind you, like I used to have a big afro, like way back in the
Yes.
day, but now the camera probably can't pick. I've got this crater right
Oh
here.
man, the crater.
I mean, I wish I could like put some solar panels or something on it, but
Maybe are you going to do Rogaine?
no, I'm just gonna shave it. So I'm of the age, and I'm married, where I'm not necessarily trying to, preserve my appearance. So yeah.
I understand. Same here. Does it show?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. It's almost like, so in Bible study last week, I did a message on spiritual calorie counting, and
Nice.
one of the things I had talked about was, I'm actually calorie counting now. Like I'm actually like trying to count my calories, because we're going on a cruise, hopefully at the end of the year, assuming COVID doesn't like control everything. And I was telling the folks in the Bible study that I'm just trying to get rid of my dad bod, and I want to go back to like the happily married bod,
The happily married bod.
like I've abandoned the going back to the single and ready to mingle bod, but so I just want the middle ground. I just want the middle ground.
Yes, I totally understand. That is hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
A
Well,
father figure.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because we didn't start this podcast intending to talk about the struggles of men,
No.
which are far and wide. Being sarcastic. Like we decided to do an Easter special, right? Like do like
Yes.
because some people, from what I understand, are like are CEOs when it comes to like churchy stuff. They do like the Christmas, Easter. And then what's the O? I can't remember the O. There's an O one in there.
Obligation.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Obligation to grandma
Yeah.
or to mom.
So it's Easter. So, well, it's Easter tomorrow. I guess this is Easter Saturday.
Holy Saturday is what they call it.
Oh,
That's
really?
That's what Christians refer to it as.
Oh, really? So it actually has a name?
Yeah, it's got a name. I mean, I guess you wouldn't know, but yeah, it's got a name.
Now,
wait, let's see. Yeah, it's Palm Sunday, which is the previous Sunday. A week ago was Palm Sunday. That's the Sunday that it introduces the Holy Week. So this thing is all called the Holy Week. And so there's Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday.
I gotcha. All right. It's I watched a video on Palm Sunday with my oldest on Palm Sunday, and it was like this kid cartoon. It was like they talked about like people putting out the palms and like rocks crying and a whole bunch of other stuff,
Yeah.
But like they showed this like field of like people that were watching like Jesus come into the city, and there was this one kid that was like, I don't know what this animator was thinking, but this kid had like crazy eyes. I mean, he was just like he was like looking at Jesus coming through the city, kind of like that, and and my oldest, that's all he could focus on. Like
He couldn't get it away.
it's like the picture of Jesus on the donkey, all these palm leaves. It's like sort of this I don't know, this moment, and this kid with crazy eyes, and my oldest is just like focused on that. So when my wife came home, she was out doing something. I said, "Hey, Jericho's his name." I say, "Jericho, like, tell your mom what you learned about Palm Sunday." And he's like, "Well, there's something about like Jesus in a city and rocks crying and this kid with crazy eyes." Like
this kid with crazy eyes.
So for him, that's what Palm Sunday is. But I'm pretty sure it's not accurate. Like, what is Palm Sunday?
Oh, Palm Sunday celebrates the day when Jesus came into Jerusalem, and everyone was excited for him to come in because they thought he was essentially going to come in and kick out Caesar and the bad Herods that were ruling everything. And he was going to come out and overthrow Roman occupation and start the revolution, La Revolution.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
I think I just did two different languages.
Yeah. So another.
Viva la Revolution.
So if I'm getting this right, so to put this in a modern context, it's almost as if like people thought that they were getting this person to the big city to come stop the steal. And
Yes.
They were super excited. They were following him to go into the Capitol, and so they're cheering him on.
Yes, and then they realized that he was Mike Pence.
They're like, "Oh."
He was more like Mike Pence than Trump, and they got upset about that.
It's more of a lover, not a fighter, kind of.
So kind of like Mike Pence, they went like from like loving him to wanting to crucify him within a week. I don't know if it was probably less with Pence. I'm not sure. Who even knows what Pence is doing these days?
Yeah.
Getting ready for his 2024 campaign.
Yeah. He's gonna rock it.
So yeah, that's a really good analogy. They were thinking that he was gonna come in and become this king, the chosen one, kind of like the Matrix, except without not without all the really cool like crazy karate stuff. But it was kind of like that. And then but then Jesus disappointed them mightily with what he did, because he came in and he caused a bunch of ruckus in the temple and made a bunch of people mad. And then they decided, that's the Reader's Digest version. And then they decided to kill him and crucify him.
So like, was there any precedent for like why did the people think he was going to be coming in like a wrecking ball,
Well, yeah, there was. He came in on a donkey, and that was actually the sign of a king that was coming in with peace, instead of like a war horse. And so he came in on a donkey, and that signaled that he was a king, that he came in. So Jesus kind of did these things that had a lot of symbolic meaning. I'm trying to think of something that would be like, say someone like strolling down Pennsylvania Avenue or something, or someone like someone who was a potential president elect would maybe trying to come down and like stroll down Pennsylvania Avenue with a big like following and is it a motorcade, and then go up to to the White House and like just look at it longingly or something like that, or like make a speech in front of my future house. I mean, he didn't do something like that, but it was this very heavily symbolic actions that Jesus took that everyone at that time would have understood, that he was a king, and yet at the same time he was disrupting everyone's expectations. I mean, there's no way they would have killed him in the way they did, likely, had he not caused the kind of ruckus that he had, or had the following that he did. So he was a very serious figure, so much so that he was tried before Pilate. Again, was the governor um, of Judea at that time for the Roman government, and and Pilate didn't want to be a part of it, so he was a great politician. He killed him and blamed other people for doing it. So he was awesome. I don't know who does that these days. He basically assassinated this guy, killed him, and then blamed other people. Maybe the CIA. I don't know who does that now.
I don't know. Well, it's interesting because we just finished a whole series on March for Life, and Shane Claiborne mentioned how there's so many layers between the execution and the executioner. So one could probably just assume that Pilate
was Pilates. Maybe he was doing Pilates. That's where it came from.
was just a layer. It was basically just it was just a layer.
Yeah, so I mean, the Roman government didn't let people execute normally. Didn't give other governments, kind of vassal governments, or the governments that they had taken over. See, the Roman government would come in, they take everything over, and then they put someone loyal to them in power, or they'd use extortion or any kind of means to keep power over their vast empire. And they would. And one of the things that they did, though, is they didn't allow for legal executions, at least in Palestine during that time. So the Sanhedrin, which was the ruling body, the religious ruling body of the Jewish people, they're located in Jerusalem, which was the center of all Jewish religion, and still is very much so. And Jesus, the Sanhedrin needed to get him executed, and they couldn't do that on their own. So they had to take him to Pilate. Otherwise, they just would have killed him, but they didn't have the authority to do that, especially someone so public a figure. And so they had to convince Pilate that he was worthy to be executed. And so essentially Jesus was executed under charges of, sedition and insurrection, seen as an insurrectionist against the Roman authority, against the emperor, and he was executed as a political criminal. And that's how they got it done. They took him to the local prefect and governor, Pilate, and they had him killed, man.
So on, I guess what occurred. So Palm Sunday, last Sunday, and there's a whole week of stuff. So what happened in those 5 days or 6 days or something,
Yes. Well, there's quite a few things that happened during that time. Actually, most of the Gospels, they give a disproportionate amount of time to Jesus and his time in Jerusalem when he comes there in this last week. So between Palm Sunday. And what was happening is that during that time was a Jewish festival known as the Passover, which essentially celebrated, is one of several Jewish festivals that celebrated, this one in particular celebrated God's, when he set his people free in the Exodus. So when he came through and smote, is that the right word?
Smited
the Egyptians and delivered his people, we know it as the Exodus from Egypt. And so they celebrated this in the Passover, and it was during this week, which was an enormously important time in the Jewish calendar, and the population of Jerusalem would swell during that time, where people were traveling from all over that area to come and offer sacrifices and be there during that week. So it was an extremely important week in the Jewish calendar and Jewish way of life. And Jesus came and they don't give us a lot of information as to everything going on surrounding them, but Jesus essentially has some final times with his disciples. He goes in and he clears out the temple. People get really mad about that. They don't like it. And he clears out the temple though. And then after that, he spends some last times with his disciples. Then he's arrested, taken to trial, and then he is killed on Friday before Passover. So the day before Passover, he is executed and then buried on that day. And then according to Christian belief, which is what I believe and what you believe, that that God raised Jesus from the dead into a different kind of body on Sunday, probably around AD 33. That's our best idea.
Got it. So I think when before I was a Christian, before I drank the Jesus juice, like I always had a hard time with like, why did he die? I mean, like, I'm just like, if he's Jesus, why didn't he snap his fingers, and basically make everything better, or like, like how does one, necessarily become king? Is it by exploiting the workers or by hanging on to outdated imperialist dogma, which perpetuates the economic and social differences in our society? Hashtag Monty Python, search for the Holy Grail. Like,
yes.
Like, I'm just curious. Like, why did he have to die?
Well, that's a loaded question, Mang. No, but it's a good question. I think that what you're hitting on, there's a lot of layers to this. In one sense, right, we know that the most proximate cause of his death, what you're asking is what was the cause of his death? What was going on? The most proximate cause of his death, of course, was the political powers of the time. And he was killed as a matter of political expediency and really to preserve the status quo for the Sanhedrin, who felt at risk with, they had this guy who was known as a miracle worker. He was young, very popular, known as a miracle worker. People flocked to him. They listened to him. He seemed to have more authority than they did. He caused an enormous amount of controversy during that time. And so they saw it as preserving their very way of life, really, because they, I'm sure, feared that this king who came in here, or someone proclaiming to be a king, would be a threat to their power and would also cause the Roman Empire to come in and basically the full wrath of the Roman Empire, which did eventually happen twice in 70 AD, when actually Rome came in and completely destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. And we still have the ruins there today of that event. And then later on in about 120 to 130, there was another revolution called the Bar Kokhba Revolution. And then again, Rome came in and just annihilated them. And so we found that this happened. And so we have all these political actors playing during that time, and each with their own interests and their own incentives. So if you think about the human reason, it kind of makes sense. Like, why did Jesus die? Well, he came in and he confronted the powers, and because of that confrontation, that led to his death. Now, the deeper theological question of why did God, send his son, Jesus, and why did he have to die for people's sins? That's a far deeper conversation. And what we know We know that, so historically, we know that Jesus existed. I don't think very many people would argue he didn't. Certainly not in any kind of mainstream historian normally. We know that he existed. We know that he had a group of followers that rose up after he was dead, and what started the Christian Church. We have a lot of historical evidence for that, and we know that Jesus was crucified by the Roman government. And really, historically, we know that there's really great evidence that there is an empty tomb. Now, what happened to the body? That's a different question. Believers believe that he rose from the dead. God raised Jesus from the dead. Other people have different theories throughout history as to what happened to the body.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like my early day belief about Jesus and the tomb was that, like the Easter bunny was the one that rolled like the big stone or whatever in front of like his burial site. Yes. And it was empty. And that's the reason we give kids a bunch of empty Easter eggs when they go on their Easter hunt.
Easter is not a great name, actually. It's actually better named like Resurrection Sunday or the Passion or Paschal. They have in different language. Easter, I think, is like some German goddess or something like that. And like, I don't even. I honestly am not brushed up on the history of it. I read about it before, but I know it's like some pagan goddess that, like, I don't know, probably a goddess of fertility or something, and then some like Easter bunny. Yeah, because then they would raise from, like, it was all like having to do with the equinox and all this stuff. But that the bunny, the candy, all that stuff, that's totally foreign to the Christian story of Easter or Resurrection Sunday.
Yeah,
but maybe it was the bunny.
It would make more sense to have like an Easter chicken, like than a Easter bunny.
Lays an egg.
Yeah, I've never really understood that. Never.
Or like an Easter archangel or something.
Yeah, because at least he'd have feathers,
Yeah, and wings. I don't think angels lay eggs, though. I'm not sure, though. But
yeah,
that's a good theological question.
Do angels lay eggs?
Do angels lay eggs? I digress. So bottom line is to answer your question, we have the human like political issues that are going on at the time. And then we have the theological issues, which are the deeper ones. And yeah, I at church last night, I gave 4 reasons, and I'll just list them quickly. Jesus had to die because we as humans had a debt that we couldn't pay. So the idea that we had some kind of debt that was there, and that's what the Bible kind of calls it in this letter that the Apostle Paul writes to Colossians. He says that we have literally like a certificate of indebtedness that was metaphorically, but really, truly, but using a metaphor, like nailed to the cross, like all of our debts that we owe to God. And essentially the idea is that we owe God something we can't pay because of our sin. And when we think about it, all of us kind of understand in relationships when someone does something to us that hits us hard, and say someone hurts us, that pain doesn't just go away. You can't just take that back. You can try to make up for it, right? You can try to make restitution for it, but it actually doesn't just go away. It's happened. It's there. And it can't be taken back at that point. It's like once you say something, you can't unsay that thing, or you can't undo that action, and theologians call what Jesus did the atonement. And really, atonement just means reparation for a wrong or an injury. That's what atonement means. And when we think about a reparation, we've talked about, that's a nice political word, but we've talked about that, which is essentially the making of amends for a wrong that someone has done. And they can either pay money or somehow help. It's some kind of compensation. So what the atonement means, that is the basic idea. But what the atonement means, of course, in Christian theology, is that God reconciled the world, humankind, through Jesus Christ and what he did. And so we had a debt we couldn't pay, and we had a God that we couldn't please. And essentially, God requires perfection. Nobody's perfect. We all disobey in thought, word, deed, action, attitude, at some level. And God revealed kind of what his perfect law was, really good, just basic idea of what that is. You could find in the Ten Commandments. You can find that in Exodus 20 or in Deuteronomy 5. You can look those up. Those are books of the Old Testament, but essentially none of us keep those. And God we couldn't please him. He requires perfection because he is perfect and he's holy. And so God had to come or Jesus had to come and that's the whole idea that he was totally God and totally man. That's why it was so important that he was those two things, because he could walk in our shoes and pay for our sin, being a person, and yet he had an infinite ability to then offer forgiveness. And it wasn't just paying for his own sins, but paying for other people's sins. That's why he had to have that infinite characteristic to him, so that he could pay for the sins of other people. Normally you can't pay for other people's sins, or you can't take other people's, like, that doesn't make sense, right? Just one person doing that for another. You could pay someone's debt, but you couldn't take their punishment. Like, it's kind of understood that maybe you could do that and satisfy some judge because they allowed that, but it's always understood that you didn't pay for that, right? Like, you didn't actually do what you needed to do to make that right. And that kind of hits at the heart of a whole legal system. Like, well, it doesn't make sense for someone else to pay for this person what they did, because they're the ones that need, they're the ones that need to be changed, or need to be punished, or need to be, redeemed, or whatever it is. But we had a God we couldn't please, and Jesus was able to please that God. We also had an enemy that we couldn't defeat. The Bible talks about this mysterious enemy, Satan, who's very powerful, and essentially, this Jesus came and claimed victory over this sin, because the consequences of sin is death. Jesus defeated death, and then there's this enemy that hates us, that named Satan. We can talk about him some other time, as much as we can understand about him, but he hates people and wanted to defeat God's plans. But Jesus came in and he defeated Satan. And then the last one is that Jesus' love. Jesus had a love that we couldn't stop, and essentially Jesus willingly went to the cross, and it was love that compelled him. The love that he had for us, the love that he had, that the Father, that God had for us, and all that. So that was kind of a quick little summary, and there's a whole lot more to atonement.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So I'm wondering if I'm understanding kind of the context correctly. So, like, I don't know if you've seen Hunger Games, but in Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen volunteers herself as tribute in place of her sister, because she didn't want her sister to have to go through this whole thing. And as she kind of went through the Hunger Games, she was triumphant, won the whole thing. Spoiler alert, and
Yes.
she, kind of went through this whole like process, went through a lot of pain, went through a lot of, whatever. And, but she didn't have to do that. Like it wasn't like her turn to go. It was her sister's turn. But, she kind of raised her hand and kind of did this, thing. I'm showing three fingers, like,
Yes.
so is that pretty similar somewhat?
Yeah. That's a good analogy.
Got it. Okay.
That's a good analogy for us to understand.
And I'm curious, like, so on the reparations part, like I don't think I've ever heard it's kind of like put in that kind of context. So I want to run a hypothetical,
Sure.
like let's just say, you were a country, and we'll call this country Blamerica. And Blamerica made a promise to pay, a certain group of people 40 acres and a mule. I'm just making this up. And and when these certain groups of people decided to ask for that, Blamerica chose to forfeit like their promise. And the context of like the reparations that were paid, like Blamerica couldn't pay it or didn't want to pay it. So
right.
like what if there was another country, I'll just call it like Wakanda, decided to pay the 40 acres and a mule instead, because Blamerica couldn't pay the debt that was owed. Is that somewhat similar?
Yeah, you could see that. Yeah, that could be. You could see that there, absolutely.
But Blamerica really should pay, right? I mean, like,
yeah, dude.
Okay, I mean, this is all made up, Yeah.
It's totally made up.
No, I think that's really good. I really appreciate you spending the time to kind of educate our folks. I'm sure we could probably talk for like another hour about the whole like complex thing about Resurrection Sunday, or whatever the Easter bunny ability to lay eggs, which is
all of that
scientifically impossible. But all right, well, cool. Yeah, that's great. Any other last moments or words of wisdom? Like how can people learn more about this kind of stuff if they kind of like what they heard?
Well, you can go on and do your own study. I always encourage that for people to go do that. I think additionally, if anyone has any questions, they can hit us up on Facebook or go to our website and send us an email, and I'd be happy to respond as best I can and send them some resources, or we can connect. Just Josh Bertram on Facebook. You can befriend me, or at Faithful Politics. What is it on Twitter? What's the tweeter?
It's on the website, but I mean, it's either Will at faithfulpoliticspodcast.com or Josh at faithfulpoliticspodcast.com.
Yeah, you can send us emails, and we'd love to respond to any questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. Well, awesome. Happy Easter, I think, then, Josh. Yeah.
Happy weird rabbit leg egg day.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Josh. Appreciate the info.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.